Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Libby and I am back today with a chatty sit down video for you guys. If you don't know me already, I'm a second year law student at the University of Exeter. I obviously have just finished second year, so I am going into third year. So I thought I would come on here and speak to you about my second year law experience. Hopefully it'll give a bit of insight into sort of the application process when I was applying for vacation schemes, the sort of level of stress, how much harder second year is, and yeah, I just thought I'd talk you through my experience, and also obviously doing it all online as well. So if you like the sound of that sort of chatty video, then keep watching. I haven't really planned this out at all, so it's very much going to be me just chatting you through my year. I also have a terrible memory for dates and things like that, so I've got my 2021 diary, and I will also have to try and remember stuff from obviously 2020 as well, because the academic year started in September. So let's get straight into the video. Let's start with the modules that I did this year. So for my uni, we do all of our compulsory modules in year 1 and year 2. So this year I did land law, equity and trusts, EU law, which was a 15 credit, so a 1-term module, and what was the other one? It's literally so recent. Oh, tort law. So tort law, land law, equity and trusts, and then EU law, which was a 1-term 15 credit module. And then I got to choose my first module this year for a term 2 15 credit module, and I chose human rights and human dignity for that one. From the beginning of the year, I think the one that sounded most enjoyable to me, like from the readings and stuff, was land law, and that actually did kind of stay true. I actually quite enjoyed all of the modules this year. I kind of mentally, I don't know if anyone else has done this, but like compared them to first year modules. So for me, like CNA was like land law, they were quite similar. I don't know if I've pulled this out of my arse, but like CNA was similar to land law for me, equity and trust was kind of similar to contract law for me, and then tort law was like quite similar to criminal law. So yeah, I sort of felt that they were kind of comparable in that way, but obviously they're like really different modules. But last year my favourite was CNA, and I really liked land law this year. And I also actually really enjoyed equity and trusts. When I got into actually writing assignments and stuff, I found it really interesting. I didn't love EU law a huge amount. Tort law I quite enjoyed. Like I found tort law a little bit easier. Like I think the content was a little bit easy to understand, and like also lighter. Like there wasn't as much reading and stuff to do for tort, so that was quite nice to have one module that I found a little bit easier. Not necessarily that I did like loads better in it, I just found it easier to get through the work. And also another thing that I really noticed that I really sort of like cemented my like for the theory of the law in this year. So I knew that I liked it last year. Like I really enjoyed writing the essays, I really enjoyed doing the readings, and that was even more so this year. So pretty much everything that I've handed in this year will have been an essay question if I had the choice, and if I didn't have the choice, obviously I would have done problem questions. So basically everything that I will be marked on this year, apart from the compulsory land law problem question, will be essay questions. So everything that goes towards my final grade will be essay questions. For equity and trusts, we had 2 assignments, and you take your highest grade forward, which was similar to what we did in criminal law last year. So that accounted for 40% of your grade, and we had a 2,000 word problem question, I believe in term 1, which I got a mid 2-1 in. And then we also had an essay question in term 2, which I really didn't want to do. I was really struggling to care. Like I didn't want to do it at all, but I ended up just doing it quickly. Like I did it in probably like 4 or 5 days maybe, like actual working days, and I ended up getting like a good first in it. So I was really glad that I did that, and that also sort of made me think that I'm definitely better at the essay questions. So when I did my equity and trust exam in summer, I answered 2 of the essay questions instead of doing a problem question, because honestly I looked at the problem questions and I was like, that is not for me. And when I was revising for equity and trust, I looked at all the past exam papers and I predicted all the essay topics that might come up again, did readings on all of them, and literally everything that I'd done readings on came up as essay questions. So I decided to go for essay questions, because obviously I was well prepared for them, because I'd done readings on all of the things that I thought would come up. So yeah, so for equity I wrote that 40% essay, obviously my higher mark, so that'll be taken forward, and then for my exam I wrote 2 essays as well. For land law we had a essay question which I think was want to say 45% of our final grade. That was on adverse possession. No, I think it was on actual occupation, but I sort of interpreted the question as being purely about adverse possession without thinking, no, was it about registered land? I can't remember, but basically I had a bit of like an oh fuck moment the day before I had to hand mine in because I'd mitigated. I went down and spoke to my housemate who'd done the same question. I was like, what have you said? And he was like, oh, I've written all about like land registration and all of that sort of stuff, and like I had written about it in the paragraph at the beginning, but I hadn't written about it like much at all because I'd really focused on adverse possession because that's the way that I interpreted the question when I first read it. So I had a bit of an essay panic and I stayed up probably till like 3 changing one of my paragraphs. Like I took out some of the stuff that I felt was adding less to the essay, and I put in sort of like a paragraph about the registered land system, like the mirror principle and all of that sort of stuff, to sort of cover what I thought the question was asking about that I'd missed. And I was terrified. I was so nervous. I thought I'd completely ruined it. I had basically got my first 2-2 earlier in the year as well that would go towards my final grade. So at this point I hadn't had any, I don't think I'd had any really good grades back by this point. So I was really doubting myself, and I thought that I was losing control of second year. I thought that I had like really ruined it, but luckily I got that one back and I got a first in that one as well, and I cried. Like I was so relieved. I couldn't believe that I'd done well, and that was the first that I got in second year. But yeah, so looping back to the 2-2 that I got, I obviously I don't really share my grades that much anyway because I don't know if it's helpful to anyone really, but I got my first 2-2 in my EU essay, which was 100% of a 15 credit module, and this was the first grade that we got back, like the first summative grade that we got back in the year, and I was gutted. I was so upset, and like I never really feel confident in essays, but like I didn't think that this was a bad essay. I hadn't sent it off thinking that it wasn't a good essay or that I was going to do badly in it, and I got a 58 in it. And I have some very funny pictures of me like sobbing because I was so upset, and I know it's dramatic, but it was the first grade I got back, and I've never got a 2-2 in a summative. I know it's a high 2-2 as well, like it was a 58, that's fine, but I was so upset, which then obviously led me to really doubt myself in the rest of the assessments that I did. Like that land law one, I was terrified. I honestly felt like second year was like spinning out of my control, and I wasn't going to do well, and I wasn't going to get a high 2-1 overall. That was really stressful, but obviously then I started getting other grades back, and I think the land law was my first of second year, so that gave me a little bit of confidence. And then I also got my first in equity, but that was actually quite recently. So when I went into my exams, I was averaging a high 2-1. I didn't work it out properly, like weighted wise, but they were all sort of roughly half of the module, so I just added them up and like divided them, and got an average of like a high 2-1, which I was more than happy with. This year, if you watched my video last year, I probably would have spoken about it, but I was incredibly stressed for exams last year. They counted for a lot more, so they really sort of like did make my final grade for first year, and I really wanted to get a first. This year I kind of said to myself, I'm gonna aim for a good 2-1 instead. There's no point in me putting pressure on myself to get a first. I can only do what I can do, and I was really stressed in first term of second year anyway, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try and aim for a good 2-1 because that's what you need for jobs anyway, and there's no point in me putting pressure on myself to try and get a first. I can only do what I can do, and if I get a first, amazing, and if I don't, I'm okay with that. Felt like I had to sort of retrain my mind a little bit and accept that my grades weren't the be all and end all. There was so much more that mattered than me getting a first, and I feel like that took a lot of the pressure off this year, and I think hopefully that's what I'll end up with. Like I would love to get a first, but I can't see it happening right now unless I did really well in my exams, and I'm not 100% sure on that. Like I think that helped take a lot of pressure off this year, and I wasn't actually that stressed for exams at all. So if you've watched any of my vlogs recently, like I was a tiny bit stressed, but I felt pretty chill towards my exams. I wasn't that stressed, but I was also struggling to care, and I don't know if this is because of the pandemic, because we've been online, I haven't seen anyone everyone really. Like, it's all been a bit not as good as it would have been if we were in person, and I don't know if I was struggling to care because of that. Again, just did my best, sort of like did the final push, put in a decent amount of work, nowhere near as much work as I put in last year, but I feel like I've gotten better at working a little bit smarter this year as well, which I think is just a process that you'll be on through your degree anyway. I wasn't that stressed. However, first term is a whole nother story because I was stressed, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was doing vacation scheme applications at the same time as everything else I was doing. So I was doing YouTube, I was on the law review, so I was doing that around Christmas time, I think, the big edit. I'm also the legal director for 180. What else? Doing vacation scheme applications. That was the thing that I don't think you realise how much time it's going to take on top of all of your uni work as well, doing assignments, and it's character building, I guess, but I was stressed. And being in lockdown as well, we were in lockdown. I was having no fun in first term of second year. So basically I started, I want to say like late October, early November, I started doing applications because I wanted to have plenty of time to do them. They recruit on a rolling basis, so the earlier you apply, the better, and I wanted to have time to apply for all the ones I wanted to apply for. So I set myself the goal of applying to 2 a week on top of everything else that I was doing. So I was working through the weekends, I was working in the evenings, and yeah, it takes a lot of time. And on top of YouTube, 180, law review, all of the things that I sort of had going around in my head, sort of like trying to manage partnerships and things like that at the same time, was quite a lot, and I was quite stressed. And also because we couldn't really leave the house, there was no break, there was no respite, there was nothing else that we could really be doing, I would have this like immense guilt if I wasn't doing work at any time, on the weekends, whenever. I would just feel incredibly guilty if I wasn't doing work. So yeah, I wasn't really having a very fun time in first term, and I do think if you're applying for vacation schemes in first term of second year, it's going to be a pretty universally stressful experience, made a little bit harder, especially if you have other commitments as well. But hopefully if you're going into second year now, you'll actually be able to like go out and have fun at the same time, because I think that made it a hell of a lot harder for me as well, because I couldn't leave my work, I couldn't sort of go out and have fun. The only thing we could do is go for like walks, and everyone else was working. Yeah, I mean that was probably the less fun part of second year for me, but also I think I am forgetting that we were in a lockdown, which wasn't good for anyone. I think overall I ended up applying for 9 or 10, I want to say 9 vacation schemes. I sort of like did my research, decided which ones I wanted to apply for, like what sort of firm I wanted to go for. Obviously commercial law I was going into, and I got a few rejections, and I was really sort of worried that I wasn't going to get any, and I was really stressed, and it felt like a lot was resting on it. It felt like my future career was resting on it. It felt like I think I really built it up in my head, and it felt like my whole life future sort of like depended on it, and obviously that wasn't really a good way to be viewing it in my head, but that was how it felt at the time. It felt really, really, really important, which obviously it was, but maybe I probably could have had a healthier way of looking at it at the time. But yeah, then I actually heard back from one of the firms, and I got an interview, and I was so chuffed with myself, because I'd sort of worked my way through it, muddled my way through it all by myself, done all my research, and yeah, just tried my best to do all these applications, sort of not really knowing what I was doing, not really having any guidance, just sort of muddling through on my own, sending off my applications, reading my own sort of stuff back to myself. And I was so proud of myself for getting one of these interviews. I felt so chuffed, and I felt like all of this sort of work that I put in, all of these extra things that I do sort of was recognised, and I felt, yeah, like I was really, really happy about it, like really happy. And then I ended up also getting another interview for another firm that I really, really liked as well. Well, that one was an assessment centre, and it all felt a little bit better, but then came the massive anxiety about the interview and assessment centres, and I think I genuinely was anxious about them all the way leading up to it. They were in early January as well, and then on my diary, I'm just looking at it now, on the 4th of January I had my EU summative due, which was the 3,000 word one. And then I had a taught exam on the 8th of January. And then on the Monday, I had one of my interviews. And then I also had classes on this week as well. And then on the Thursday, I had my assessment centre. So I think I had 2 days in between my interview and assessment centre, so to prepare for each firm, and I prepared intensely. I had very thick piles of flashcards for each firm and all my commercial awareness and all of that sort of stuff before going into the interviews and assessment centres. And then I was also revising for my exam just before that and writing this paper. And I think I was doing the law review at the same time. I think I was doing that law review edit at the same time, obviously uploading content at the same time. And I also had classes while I was doing the interviews and assessment centres in that week. And yeah, I only had 2 days between them. I had a weekend between my exam and my interview, my first interview. Leading up to that, I was incredibly stressed because I was looking at my diary and I was like, how am I going to get all of this stuff done? How am I going to keep on top of my uni work at the same time? And I mean, I did, like I always do. But it was stressful, I'm not gonna lie, that was quite a stressful time. But it wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was gonna be, because I mean, I'm getting so much better at it, like having a little bit more faith in myself and taking things a little bit at a time rather than looking at like everything that I have to do, sort of just like breaking it down, which I am good at doing that. But I think, as I said, I was just in a very sort of stressed mindset at that whole period because I had so much on and it felt like so much depended on it. I think my interviews went well. Obviously they did go well because later in the year I got calls and emails to say that I got both of them from the interview and assessment centre, which I was so pleased about, so happy, because before my first one I cannot tell you how nervous I was, so much so that I like didn't want to do it. But after I did my first one, I was so proud of myself for doing it. I was so happy that I had done it, and I felt like even if I didn't get it, I knew I would be gutted. And I think a lot of my fear came from the fear of rejection, but I felt so proud of myself for having done it regardless. And then I think I went into my second assessment centre like a lot more relaxed because I'd already done one and I felt like I could do it. And also the fact that you had to have commercial awareness and read articles for these assessment centres and interviews and get asked questions on them. The fact that I had no idea what these articles were going to be or what they were going to be about, that really scared me as well, because I didn't know how well I would be able to prepare for that. But they actually went okay as well. I'd been doing like commercial awareness readings and listening to podcasts for quite a long time leading up to that. Actually a really long time leading up to that. So I think I was as prepared as I could have been. Do you think I need to learn to trust myself a little bit more because I am generally okay. So that was the vacation schemes in term 1. I've sort of spoken about term 2 a little bit as well, and like exams. Also another thing that obviously was different this year, which I've touched on, is everything was online, and I do feel really sorry for anyone who started uni this year. It's really not the same as learning in person and like actually getting to meet people and seeing people other than your housemates every day by just going to seminars and syndicates and all of that sort of stuff. So last year we had syndicates and seminars. So syndicates were more unsupervised, you had a smaller group, and then seminars were two syndicate groups together, supervised, sort of like a lesson kind of thing. But this year we just had seminars online on Zoom, and because we are in the same modules, like everyone does the same modules apart from your 15 credit optional module, you get put with the same seminar group for all your seminars. And in mine, no one really turned their cameras on. There are probably about 2 people that talked, so the seminars were pretty crap. Like I didn't really enjoy them. Like I took a bit away from them. I find them helpful to sort of go through problem questions and things like that, like apply the law, and you don't really get to have the sort of like asides, like where you're chatting to your friends, you're chatting to your seminar group. Like you obviously can't have any of that. And we also, instead of having lectures, we'd have like a live lecture like every other week and a seminar every other week for each module. So we had a lot less contact time than we would have done in person, and the live lectures were more like Q&As depending on what sort of module it was, and they wouldn't really tell you what you were covering. Sometimes they'd cover content, sometimes it'd be a Q&A. And yeah, we had podcasts, so the content would generally be in podcasts. So they were like pre-recorded lectures that you'd watch, and you'd have the slides and make notes. So you'd be doing all of this on your own, in your own time, whereas before the content would all be taught in an in-person lecture. You'd be typing your notes, from that. This year was so much more self-motivated than last year, because last year you just walk to a lecture, type your notes, do your 50-minute lecture and you were done, and then you'd have your syndicates and seminars as well, and you do readings in your own time. Whereas this year it was, you watch the podcast in your own time, you do the readings in your own time, you'd have a live lecture or a seminar every other week, but that was it for contact hours. So I literally had 4 50-minute synchronous teaching things each week, and that was it, and the rest of it was self-motivated reading or podcasts, which obviously is not as enjoyable, but is also considerably harder depending on what type of person you are. So I'm good at staying organised and self-motivated and setting deadlines and doing to-do lists and all of that sort of stuff. But if you find that really hard to do, then you're going to have really struggled this year, especially if you've just been thrown into first year and you can't really speak to anyone, because quite often when you're actually sat in a room with law students, everyone's struggling with the same thing, everyone finds things hard, and you can sort of just like laugh about it, talk about it, help each other, but you don't have that sort of support when you're online either. So I do feel really bad for anyone who did it first year this year. I also felt like because we weren't in person, they sort of increased the quantity of content, so that made it a bit harder as well, because we had like loads of stuff to get through and I was doing like a lot of uni work every week. But yeah, I also felt like that eased off a little bit in second term, and I also got a little bit lazier on the readings and stuff. Like I was still doing them, but I got better at sort of like knowing what was important. And with land law, once we'd done our essay, I knew that it was just a problem question, so I stopped reading theory and things like that. So it's sort of all a process, like I said before, of like learning what's important and what's not important, and sort of like learning to get quicker at doing all of the work and doing it more efficiently. So yeah, overall online learning was not that fun, but also like it wasn't the end of the world, like it was still okay. And second term, with things opening up, we were like going out more, that was so much more fun. I think overall I definitely did struggle with first term, just a combination of everything that I had on, vacation scheme applications, and also the fact that we were in a lockdown, and just like the fear of failure and the sort of anxiety about my future. I think that was really, really tough in first term, but it eased a lot in second term, and I felt so much more chill in second term. And yeah, obviously it's summer now, I've finished all my exams and everything, I've finished all my work, and I'm still in Exeter, so we're just having fun in Exeter, seeing people, all of that sort of stuff. I think I'm going home mid-June for good, and then we're in the same house next year as well. Yeah, that's me all done. Results day is on the 28th of June, so we will see how that goes as well. I'm also feeling a little bit anxious, so this video is going to be up late for this week, but I've been away, we've been doing all of the things that we didn't really have time for. We've got lovely weather now as well, so I'm finding it a little bit hard to fall into a routine and get stuff done, which is kind of frustrating me, because I don't know, I like to get stuff done quickly, efficiently, and like be getting stuff done all the time. So I'm feeling a little bit anxious with not having exams. I kind of don't like it. I kind of don't like not having uni work, but I think I'll fall into it and relax a little bit. But I'm feeling more anxious now after exams, because I don't have any uni work or anything to do, than I did for my exams. I don't know if anyone else gets that, like post-exam, post-uni anxiety. That's where I'm at the moment. I might maybe get some shift work when I get home, just to keep myself busy, but I'll probably have lots of things to be doing, lots of people to be seeing when I'm home as well. But yeah, that's been a really rambly, unstructured video. I went very much back and forth, which I do apologise for. It was very much a stream of consciousness. I hope that's given you a little bit of insight. I hope that's been interesting. If you have any questions, I will try and get them answered if you comment them down below. Let me know what content you'd like to see from me over summer as well. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did, and I will see you in the next video.